Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Green Bean podcast. My name is Katie, this is Jack, and you're watching episode 18. We're recording this in my studio in Devon in the southwest of England, and this is a podcast about my drawing work as an illustrator and my knitting and my sewing and a bit of sharing Dartmoor and the landscape around where we live. And that was a introduction that sounded like I know what I'm doing. Since the last episode, I have been on adventures, and it feels like ages since I've spoken to you. So this is definitely going to be a episode that errs on the chatty side, but I hope that you'll enjoy hearing about what I've been up to. The first thing that happened was I had my very first stand at Yarndale. And for those of you who don't know, I left my full-time job in the yarn industry about a year ago to go back to freelance illustration, which is something I had done in the past and had been taking a break from due to various health issues. And now I'm back and I've been doing it for a year, and what an incredible first year of business. So it feels sort of like a first year and not like a first year, but what an incredible year it's been. And yeah, the real culmination was having my first full-size trade stand at Yarndale. And yeah, thank you to everybody who came to see me there. I had a wonderful time, even though it was the most hideous weekend in terms of weather. It was so wet. I think unfortunately some of the vendors had the roof leaking onto their stands. I was among the lucky few who didn't have that happening, but it wasn't the best weekend, so thanks to all the brave people who came out and shopped and came out to celebrate yarn anyway. So yeah, the few months leading up to Yarndale were hectic and exciting, and I was busy developing new products for my shop, and it meant that I took the time to really work on and develop some projects that I've dreamed of having in my shop for a long time. So some of the new things I was able to introduce were project bags with my British sheep reeds design on and cushion covers. I also introduced a new tea towel design which I worked on over the summer. I don't think I even shared it on the podcast before, but I did an ink illustration of woodland friends, so various different, there's a hedgehog, a couple of deer, some rabbits, a badger, wildlife that lives in the woodlands, but I dressed them up in multicoloured knitwear and had them all knitting or crocheting. And yeah, I really enjoyed turning that one into a tea towel design and a print. I added a new enamel pin to my range, which I was really excited about. A little Jack. I know how much you all love Jack. And rubber stamps. I added rubber stamps to my range for the first time. Rubber stamps are something really special to me because as a teenager, when I was struggling with mental health and struggling to really follow my urge to be creative, I guess, I had a lot of doubts and didn't receive a lot of encouragement at school about my ability to draw. So rubber stamps were a way of enabling me to be creative without having to face the bit of my brain that told me that I couldn't draw. So they were kind of my gateway drug, if you like, my way into being creative. So to be able to add them to my shop with my own illustrations has been such a joy, and I'm looking forward to sharing using some of those stamps with you in this episode. After Yarndale, I took a very well-earned, if I may say so myself, holiday. I love Yorkshire. If you've been watching the podcast for a while, you will have seen that I took a Yorkshire trip last year as well. It really is one of my favourite parts of the country, and it was really nice to have 10 days off up there with my partner and Jack. We did lots of walking, lots of knitting because it rained, and do you know, I switched off social media for the whole time, and I also took little to no video footage. I just enjoyed being out walking without having to think about having a camera with me, just being in the moment. It was a really, really special break and very much needed. So I really enjoyed that. And then since then I've come back, I've put all of the new products that I added for Yarndale up into my Etsy shop, and we've been busy packing orders. I've been back to client work and getting into the rhythm of things. So it's taken me a while to feel like I've caught up with myself and I'm ready to record another podcast. But here we are, and it feels really good to be back and sharing what I've been working on with you. So settle in, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Drawing wise, lately I've been almost entirely working on projects for clients. I've had really full books with clients since coming back from my holiday, which is great, but it does mean that I don't have any drawing on my table that I can share with you. So instead I thought I would show myself using some of the new stamps from my range. So I can't tell you how excited I am to be bringing rubber stamps into my shop for the first time. When I was a kid, I used to have a toy post office set, and it was one of my favourite things to play with. And it's still one of my favourite parts of packing and posting out your orders, is when I get to do the rubber stamps with my return address on the back. I just love using them, and I've worked with my manufacturer, the English Stamp Company, who are based in Dorset, which is just one county east of Devon. Sorry, I had to think about that. So they're pretty local to me, and they use sustainably harvested hardwood for the handles. They feel really, really nice quality. And yeah, I just love the fact that they can turn my illustrations into rubber stamps that can repeat the illustration again and again. It's amazing. So the stamp I'm going to play with today is one of my favourites. It's a little one that says it has pockets. I'm going to make some labels to go inside my handmade clothes. You all know how I feel about pockets and how useful they are. Now that I've started making my own clothes, I really wouldn't make anything without pockets in it, and I think there's a lot of makers who share that sentiment. So I thought that having this stamp as a clothes label would be something that quite a few people would relate to. Now I'm just stamping this onto unbleached cotton ribbon, and when I've done a selection of them I'll cut them with pinking shears. The ink I'm using is called Versacraft, and it's an ink that you can use on paper and wood and on fabric, and just in order to make it washable you just have to treat it with an iron. The heat is what fixes the ink. So before I add these into my sewing box I will just give the ribbon an iron. And then they'll all be set and ready to go. So in that range of handmade stamps, I did just a simple one that says handmade, which is the right size to go on the ribbon. I also did some designs that would work on gift tags, so one with yarn and one with sewing thread, so it covers different kinds of crafts. They both say handmade and they fit nicely on a little parcel gift tag. That's those ones. And I also did some that are corner designs, so you would use them maybe on an envelope or something when you're writing a name or address, and they just add a little decoration in the corner. The other range that I did that I'm really pleased with and have been really popular so far is a selection of animals wearing jumpers. So I did a cat, a bear, a sheep and a little dog who might seem very familiar. I've been really pleased with how these ones are going down, and they look lovely in black and white, but my hope is that people might colour in these designs. Certainly that's what I had in mind when I was drawing them, is that people could add their own colours to the jumper. onto knitting, and I have a veritable pile of finished objects to share with you, which has never happened on the Green Bean podcast before. I'm usually such a slow knitter, but because I haven't recorded in a while and obviously I've been on holiday, I had more knitting time and I was making a concerted effort to finish some projects that had been around for a while. So the first project I finished was my Curlew Hat, which is a project I've been working on and off, mostly off, since June last year. Sorry, I'm just noticing that it's got some moss on it. I shall pick that off. This is a free pattern that is available. I'm sorry I can't remember the designer's name, but as always I list the details and the links to my Ravelry project pages down below, so you can find all the information about the hat and any other projects that I talk about down there. It's a free pattern and it's colourwork with a ribbed cuff. The pattern called for a 1x1 ribbed cuff and I hate how my 1x1 ribbing looks. I don't mind how twisted ribbing looks, but I do mind how it feels to knit it. Hurts my hands, so I went for 2x2, and then it has colourwork, curlews, and I finished with a pom-pom using all the different colours that I'd used here. I knitted this with a mixture of Jamieson's of Shetland and JC Rennie yarn, mostly using just scraps that I had in my stash. And I'm pretty pleased with it, although when I blocked it over a kitchen mixing bowl in our holiday cottage, which was perfect for blocking the main body of the hat, but I think I overstretched the ribbing while I was pulling it over the bowl. And it's lost. You can see that the ribbing doesn't have any elasticity anymore. It's just the same width as the hat. And what that means is, although it fits nicely, slowly as I'm walking, it kind of just rides up and up and up and then sits on the top of my head. It's particularly not very good in the wind, which is really frustrating. So I know what I have to do. I know I have to re-knit the ribbing, and what I will do is cut this off, pick up stitches and knit the ribbing downwards. But my goodness, after having this languish for a year and finally finishing it, the last thing I want to do is unfinish it and start part of it again. So it'll stay as it is for now, and at some point in the future I will come back and remedy the situation. The second finished project from my holiday is definitely not all going to fit in the screen at once. It is my Drucilla Shawl, and actually it's folded over double, so it's actually a large diamond shape. It's huge. And this is a crochet design by Faye Dashper Hughes, which appeared in the John Arbon annual earlier this year. And it took 4 full skeins of 4-ply. I'm going to put it on. That's probably the best way to show it off. 4 full skeins of 4-ply. I used the John Arbon Harvest Hues for it, which I'd had in my stash for a long time, so it was nice to finally find a use for it. It was a lot of work. I really, really enjoyed it, although as you work from one tip and it grows outwards to the widest point, and then you decrease back inwards to the final tip. Some of those middle rows, when they were so long, I will confess, were a little tedious, but I think it's worth it. I can't believe that I didn't have a green shawl in my wardrobe. I've been a knitter and crocheter for such a long time, and you all know about my fondness for the colour green. All my shawls are, I've got a grey one and a white one and another grey one, but I didn't have a green one, so I'm really pleased to have added this to my wardrobe. And yeah, I've hardly taken it off since finishing it. My third finished project is gonna shock and surprise you in more than one way. First, it's socks. Second, it's a pair of socks. And thirdly, it is a test knit for socks that I finished on time. these are all things that are very rare occurrences in my world. So here they are. These are the Harbour Chains socks. I can take off my shawl so that you can see them against the green, because they're green. Harbour Chains socks by Anthea Willis, who is Forest Flower Knits. And she very kindly agreed to let me test knit them, even though I have the worst track record as a test knitter, I think, ever. And if you want proof of that, you can go back to my last episode and watch me ripping out a whole bunch of test knits that I didn't finish on time. But I'm proud to say that these I did finish on time, and I love them. They are also knitted in John Arbon in their Exmoor sock base, which they revamped with new colours earlier this year, and obviously I bought the green because I'm extremely predictable. The socks have a lovely cable design that goes all the way down the front and down the back of the leg. There's a heel flap and gusset with an eye of partridge heel, and I did make a couple of modifications to the pattern, but nothing major. Sorry, I'm just picking off the fluff and dog hair from the soles of them. I've been wearing these and thoroughly enjoying wearing them. I did some ribbing on the sole because I have a high instep but quite slim feet, so I often find that heel flap and gusset leaves a floppy bit of empty sock on the sole of my foot, so I just added some ribbing to draw it in under the sole of my foot. And I finished the sock with a barn toe rather than a wedge toe and Kitchener stitch, because I find that this slightly pointier toe fits my foot a bit better. But apart from that, I was told and followed the pattern, and these were just a joy to knit. The cable looks deceptively complicated. I was actually able to memorise the chart quite quickly. I think after the second repeat I was able to work without looking at the chart. And the cables are all small enough that they were nice and easy to work without a cable needle, which is nice. You know, socks are a great travelling project, but I get frustrated with having to carry around extra bits and pieces. So not having to tuck a cable needle in my knitting bag was a good thing. What else can I say about them? I really enjoyed working with the yarn. It's a blend of superwash wool and nylon, so in theory I could machine wash them, but like all of my handmade things, I'm not going to put them in the washing machine because they're too precious to me. And I believe at the time of publishing this episode the pattern will be available from Anthea, so I highly recommend it. I'm just about to record my next bit of knitting chat, and it started hailing outside my studio, so if you can hear that tinkling on the window, that is hail coming down outside. So I'm very grateful to be in here with Jack curled up by my feet and keeping warm with some knitting. It looks horrible out there. So, the knitting project I have on my needles currently is another test knit sock. I don't know what's come over me. In the past I've not been much of a sock knitter, but recently I've been really discovering the joy of wearing hand knitted socks, and that joy is reserved for either somebody who's got a very willing relative to knit socks for them, or people who knit socks for themselves. So I'm slowly transforming myself into a more enthusiastic sock knitter. And the test knit I'm working on is for Marceline Smith, who is Mars of the Hey Brownberry podcast. And these socks are a forthcoming design called the R&R socks. They use two colours, and they will have a textured pattern on the front of the sock and stripes on the back. In fact, I can show you because this is a second sock. It's something else I'm very proud of. So this sock is about 75% finished. So you can see it's got a striped toe and back of the sock, and this lovely two-colour texture up the front. And the reason I've stopped is because I was running slightly short of the pink. So the yarn I'm using is Tuku wool sock. I've got a brown and a pink. And it's very thick sock yarn. I'd say it's not 4-ply weight really, it's almost a sport. And I was getting to this point on the first sock and starting to think I might not have enough pink to... I was just worried about making the socks the same length. So I slipped this sock onto some waste yarn and then started knitting the second sock. And what I will do is I will get them both to the same length and then split the remaining pink yarn, if there is any, in half, and then just use that until the pink yarn runs out, and then the cuff will be in the brown. Because the heel is in pink, I've got slightly more brown yarn than pink yarn. So it's going to be really satisfying to knit a pair of socks with 2 whole skeins and not have anything left over. But yeah, it just means I've gone this slightly sideways way about it, where I've half finished one sock and then started the next one. But I guess it's a good way of avoiding second sock syndrome. If I'd been organised, I might have split the yarns before I started, but I'm not that organised. What can I say? I'm really enjoying this test knit so far. The joy of using this Tuku wool sock yarn and the thickness of it is that I'm somebody who normally knits a 72 stitch sock on very tiny needles because I like a lovely dense fabric. With this yarn I'm doing a 56 stitch sock, so it's incredibly quick. It feels like it's flying off the needles, and to be honest, the soothing pattern is just so relaxing to knit. It involves a little bit of attention but not too much. It's definitely good TV or podcast knitting. It just feels like it's going along nice and smoothly, and who knows, I might even finish this test knit on time as well. I was really proud that I was able to pack an almost entirely handmade wardrobe for my holiday. In terms of main garments, so skirts, dresses, jumpers, everything was handmade. And I had handmade shawls, gloves, a couple of pairs of handmade socks. I'm not quite fully kitted out with handmade socks yet, which is part of the reason why I'm on a sock knitting mission at the moment. But I was really pleased that all of the clothes I took were handmade, and those are very much the clothes that I'm reaching for at the moment. The problem that caused is when I got home from holiday, obviously all of those clothes were covered in mud and needed washing. I'm also very particular about my handmade clothes, and I only wash them by hand. And I'm a lazy washerwoman, so they kind of lay in a pile in a bag for longer than they needed to. And what I was finding is that I just didn't want to wear the ready-to-wear clothes that were left behind in my wardrobe. There's a few reasons for that. Obviously, I don't feel as excited about them. My tastes have changed and there's different things I want to wear. Also, my body's undergone some changes with the medication that I've been on the last year or so. And in adjusting to that, my handmade clothes feel better to me than my shop-bought clothes. So I kind of got a bit stressed out about it, and I might have made a major pile of donations to the charity shop, which is great. But then I didn't have anything to wear, so I went on a bit of a sewing spree. The dress I'm wearing is one result of that sewing spree. I actually made one other from the same pattern, which you can see in the photo that I took of my Drucilla Shawl. It's green, obviously, and in that same session I also cut out the pieces for a third one. So it's been really nice. I now have, I think, 6 on my way to 7 versions of this dress, so that's one for every day of the week, which is enough clothes. It's really lovely to be able to be wearing handmade stuff all the time. I'm also really enjoying my dinosaur jumpsuit that I made over the summer. I'm planning to make another one of those. As it turns out, my partner's going to be away this weekend, and one of the things I love about him taking some time away is that I can spread out and have a big sewing session without feeling like I'm encroaching on the space. I don't know if other viewers who sew feel like they're messy or take up a lot of space when they're sewing, but because I work in the kitchen when I'm sewing, which is a shared part of the house, I very much am conscious of, you know, I've got to have all the pieces laid out on the table and the ironing board, and you know, I take over every surface that's available, so it's nice to have a chance to do that without feeling like I'm getting in his way. So I'm looking forward to a sewing weekend and adding a couple more dresses to my wardrobe. I've talked about it many times before, but I will talk about it again. The dress that I make all the time is View P from this book, Formal and Little Back Dress by Yoshiko Sugiuri. And I make a couple of modifications to it. So the pattern is for a empire line, and I lower that to sit on my waist. I added pockets because I can't cope with any dress without pockets. And on this particular version, I did a bias binding neckline. Normally I do a faced neckline, which is what the pattern calls for, but I really like the, I really liked how this scrap of bias I found in my sewing box matched with this fabric. And yeah, I think I'll probably do this bias neckline again. I'm really pleased with how the finish looks. But I wanted to share a bit of a funny story with you about this book, because I'm always saying that it's in Japanese and it's not too difficult to follow the Japanese instructions, but it's not available in English. Turns out it is. And the way I found that out was by accidentally ordering it for myself. I'm always keeping an eye out for Japanese sewing books. I really enjoy them, so I ordered this one, Stylish Party Dresses by Yoshiko Sugiuri, and it came in the post and it's the same book. I felt really stupid. But what it does mean is that those of you who would rather follow an English sewing pattern now have access to this book in English. So here it is on this page. You can see that her waistline is a lot higher than mine, so I just lowered it, and then I didn't shorten the dress to compensate for that, so it means that the skirt then falls below my knee. And yeah, so there it is, also available in English. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Green Bean podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about what I've been up to. A couple of things before I go. If you would like to watch me learning to spin using a drop spindle, my lovely friend Becks, who hosts the Tiny Fibre Studio podcast, gave me a lesson way back in the year when I had long hair, and she's edited that and uploaded it on her channel, Tiny Fibre Studio. I will put a link in the box below, and you can watch me having my first ever spinning lesson if you want to. I hope you enjoy that. And finally, if you've enjoyed this episode and would like more, I have a page on Patreon where you can support what I do financially, which is always hugely appreciated. And in return, I offer extra episodes and vlogs, and we have a nice little community growing over there. So if you can and you've enjoyed the episode, I'd really encourage you to head over there and think about joining us on Patreon. If not, I will see you here on YouTube again very soon. Take care, and thanks for watching. Bye.